In problem 13.3, we are told that the teacher in that last problem actually miscounted the number of objects in the jar. There are not 100 objects in the jar, there are actually only 90. So that means that we have to go back and, as the mathematicians we are, update this table here to have the correct absolute guessing errors. So we start right at the top. A guess of 75 no longer has an error of 25. It is actually only 15 off from 90. A guess of 110, though, has actually gotten worse. It is now 20 off from the actual number of 90. I'm going to pause the video again to fill in the rest of this table, and we'll be back in a moment. Now that we have our table filled in, we're asked to make a couple observations about this new set of errors. So one thing I notice is that all of our values have changed. Some of them have gone up, some of them have gone down, but they have all changed. Now, in general, it looks like our low guesses now have smaller errors, which makes sense because the actual number went down from 100 to 90, and our high guesses now have bigger errors. The other thing I notice is that all of our errors seem to have changed by 10, right? 25 turned into 15, it went down by 10. 10 turned into 20, it went up by 10. So the errors changed by 10. And one final thing I notice is that that interesting point we saw before, that error of 0, is now down here with a guess of 90. The next thing we're asked to do with this table is to predict what the graph is going to look like this time, and then graph this on technology to see what it actually does look like. Now, I'm not going to make a prediction here. I'm going to let you do that. So take a moment, pause the video, and make your prediction for what the new scatter plot will look like. Hopefully you've made your prediction, because now we're going to go over to Desmos, and we're going to start graphing these points. So what does it look like on Desmos when I graph this? The first point we're going to graph was that guess of 75, which gave us an output of 15. And that's not showing up on the graph right now because we have to adjust our axes here. So I'm going to zoom out, and I'll make this look a little nicer in a moment. But I'm going to pause the video here. I'm going to finish filling in these points, and then we'll come back and see what this graph looks like. All right, so I've gone ahead and I've finished graphing those points. And now you probably notice we still have that same V shape that we saw in the last graph. And it still seems to be pretty symmetrical as far as the shape goes, even though in this case we have a lot more points on the right-hand side. But I want to point out a really interesting point. Again, we have our middle, that kind of corner of the V, at 90, which is where we saw that interesting point on the table, 90, 0. So let's come back over here to our document. And we just went ahead and hopefully you've now confirmed if your prediction was right or wrong, and we've seen what the graph looks like. The last thing they ask us is to write a rule for finding the output if you know the input. Now again, this is another thing I don't want to do for us right now, because there is a very specific math rule that we could write here. But I want to see if you can come up with it on your own, because we're going to talk about it next class to see what different ideas people have figured out.